Okay, let's just give it a minute. See that people are logging in, so. Can you all see the chat window down the bottom of your screen? Can you see the Q&A window? Okay. Okay, we're about to start. Let's just give it a couple of more seconds. Okay, thank you, Jan.
Is it chat window? I don't see the chat window.
I also don't see it, but I think it's...
You don't see it?
I can see it at the bottom, in the bottom panel.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I do now.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's the one.
Okay.
Okay, excellent. Excellent. Hello, everyone. We're about to start. We're just going to give a couple of more seconds. You see that the panelists are on the starting blocks. They're willing to start the conversation. In the meantime, please use the chat box and let us know where you are joining us from and what your job role is, maybe. We'll start in a second. Okay. All right, let's get the conversation started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Gala's webinar. My name is Isabella Massardo. I'm content strategist here at Gala. And today's webinar is on the evergreen topic of implementation of machine translation in a corporate environment and all the related challenges. The moderator is Laura Rossi. She's MT Program Manager at Medtronic, and she will, besides moderating the discussion, she will also introduce her guests. So Laura, I'm going to leave the floor to you. But before, please, everybody, use the QA box or the chat, whatever you prefer, to submit your questions you might have for the speakers. And I would invite you to do it throughout the presentation as you think of them. So, and feel free to comment at any time. We want to have an engaging discussion. So, Laura, I'm going to leave it over to you.
Thank you, Isabella. Well, welcome to everybody. Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, and welcome to our panelists. I would like actually to let the panelists introduce themselves and also maybe as a kind of icebreaker question, ask you when you got into contact with machine translation and how. So we have Anna Medina from SAP. Welcome, Anna.
Hi. Yeah, so I'm Anna. I work as a product manager at SAP for the product is named SAP Translation Hub. I'm part of the product entails machine translation service. And I got into MT a few years ago when SAP actually started rolling out machine translation for the standard translation process. Before it was only barely get to know each other that I had at university. Yeah,
great to
happy
hear.
to be here.
Welcome, welcome. So, and then we have Anna Golubeva. I hope I pronounced it more or less correctly, Anna. Welcome.
Thank you, Laura, and it was correct. Yeah, thank you. Hello, everybody, and it's good to be here today on this panel. I'm Anna, working in IKEA Systems, which is the franchisor of the IKEA brand. So one of the IKEA organizations, and I'm working there as the one who is responsible for the translation, localization topic, or even broader, the language topics that are connected to mostly internal communication, but also working with different kind of stakeholders who are either having the needs for translating their content and connecting also with our vendors. So when I got in touch with machine translation, I think it was also like a few years ago, when we realized, okay, there is quite a lot of content and there were some indications of, yeah, machine translation is actually something that can help you. So we started to explore this topic and to do some tests and to try out how it works with automatic translation. And yeah, and it was quite new back then, but it seems like, I think, as Isabella said, this topic is yeah, a forever topic and very interesting one. So I'm looking forward to today.
Great, thanks a lot. And then we have Taitsuichiro Furukawa from Microsoft. Welcome. He goes by the name of Tat for simplicity. And he's a little bit in a different position in this panel since there is no real, let's say, corporate MT program that he's talking about, but more from the perspective of somebody who helps and supports MT programs of partner companies of Microsoft Dynamics. So welcome, Tad.
Thank you very much, Laura. Hi, everyone. My name is Tat Furukawa. Well, Tatsuichiro, but then like Laura said, I'll make it Tat. So that it makes everyone's life much easier. I work for a business application group for Microsoft, mainly that we provide the ERP, CRM products and then Power Platforms. So I started my localization career back in the 20th century. And then the first encounter of the machine translation was, I believe, it was called the Logos on Unix. And that was probably 97, 98. So since then, I was a bit away from the machine translation, but working for the standard localization programs, went back into the machine translation arena around 2015 when we started providing the TMMT solution to our partner companies, where they take our product and then customize them and resell them. So that's how I am still in. And like Laura said, I do offer the service called the Dynamics 365 translation service to our partners and customers. And then my role is the architecture of the service, as well as the providing the support to those users.
Great. And actually interesting to hear you also started with the logo system as I did back in 2002, 2003. So I'm Laura Rossi, program manager for machine translations at Medtronic. And also my encounter with machine translation dates back to the early days of rule-based MT. And kind of never left the localization industry ever since, and also the machine translation, besides for some small pauses in my professional life for doing some more linguistic related work. So I'm going to ask you actually and go with the first question. Does your organization have a really centralized machine translation program, and where does it belong in the organization? I'm going to start again with Anna.
Yeah, so SAP is one of the biggest ERP software providers. So the main focus of the organization is of course developing software products, which means there is a big product development organization. Below the product development organization, there is a language department that it's specialized on translation. And within that language department is where the machine translation team is located. It's basically one of the development teams in there. And for SAP, machine translation is a product on its own, as I mentioned before, one of the services that is offered. But we are actually using it in very different ways. So we can consider it an external product versus part of some of the standard translation processes that we run. It's part sometimes of the content production into, if you consider multilingual content production, or in different services of products. But the host of all of that, looking at the organization, is the product development organization.
Okay, very interesting. And Anna, what about you?
Yeah, in our case, of course, we are one brand, but many different organizations. So we have a technology department, which is then responsible for the machine translation, and not only. So they provide global language services to and they are responsible for the development of that, and then providing it to different other IKEA organizations. For example, us at Franchisor. So we are also, so in a way, we are kind of the customers or the users of that service. Yeah, machine translation is one of the products. I can also relate a bit to how Anna described it. So it's a hub that is provided, and it can be then connected to the different software that we use, different, for example, content management systems, learning content systems. And yeah, so that is been established quite, I would say, still quite recently. So we just started to use MT, I think, more actively about a year ago, but it's been a very interesting experience, and I think we're learning a lot as we go.
Very interesting. And maybe I can tell from my side at Medtronic, machine translation belongs to a department called Global Translation and Localization. So we are really in the translation sphere. And we are a center of expertise within a larger organization called Corporate Technology and Innovation, which mostly deals with some very product-related things like medical devices, data, sensors and diagnostics, product concept and product realization, therapy innovation. So really, really near to the products, because traditionally the department is also developing all the technical literature in the different languages for those products and software that is related to that. However, for the machine translation program, we are a little bit in between, because we have lots of dotted lines also to the IT corporate organization, being a kind of corporate productivity tool for us. And we will explore a little bit later in the other question about the needs and different things that we are covering. So what about you, Tat? Because your position is slightly different. So do you have an MT program, or how does it work for you?
Right. So it's not for myself, but then as a Microsoft, we do have, fortunately, we do have the development team that produces the Microsoft Translator, aka Bing Translator. And then this team also provide the customized MT solution called the Custom Translator. So we use that, or when I say we, the teams in Microsoft uses that as a backbone of MT solution. And then each team consume that, and then they provide the content like TM and such, because we have different products that we produce. So some for IT pros, some are for the gamers, some are for the business users. So each team deals with the different domains. So that makes more sense to have that each individual team does its own thing based on the same system.
Very interesting perspective as well. So looking about the needs, so which kind of machine translation needs does your organization have? And I'm also interested to know, how do you hear about those needs, or how do you inquire about those needs, or how do people come to you and say, hey, I need MT? How does it work in your organizations? And I'm starting again maybe with Anna.
Sure. So for us, it's because it's a commercialized product, it's sometimes needs coming from the outside, and sometimes needs that are indeed within the organization. And yeah, sometimes they are similar, but also even within the organization, we encounter very different needs from different, if you want to call it like that, like different text types. For instance, marketing or training materials, support materials, documentation. And we try to meet always the user needs as best as we can, but of course they are always different. Not only the text type that I was talking about, but also they can be different in terms of the speed that's needed, like instant translation, or maybe something that is automatically triggered. Also, the quality needs are very different. We have use cases where MT is used as such, so just MT, but we also have full post editing use cases, even some light post editing use cases. All of that really depends on the use case and the needs, and that's something that we normally come to realize learn about in the first consultation that we have with people who want to use it. Sometimes it's other teams that come to us and ask about it, and then we we consult them on what we can do and give them some best practices. But sometimes it's also people who come to us because we do have quite some enablement materials, and then they found this enablement material and they actively approach us. And then sometimes we also search for interesting use cases where we think that machine translation can actually be a very good, can bring added value, I would say.
So you proactively propose it to other teams as well?
Also, yeah.
Oh, interesting. Very interesting. And what about Anna?
Yeah, I think when we started with MT, we kind of learned from other use cases, and I think our first needs were really to understand, okay, where MT can be a quick win, like something that will contribute to our communication. And I think in the IT area, it started with chats and help desk requests that are collected from around the world in many different languages and needed to be handled. So of course, MT could really support in this kind of basic understanding of what people need support with, and then get a quick reply on that. So I think that those were the main needs, and then they developed to, for example, also something where you again need some gist of meaning, like for example, we also used MT. And now I'm speaking of kind of the raw MT outcome. So when, for example, our customers can leave a review on a product on the website, and then we collect those reviews, which can also be left, of course, in multiple different languages in different countries, and then we translate them back to English for our product development team to actually look at that, evaluate, analyze what is it that customers think about a product, how can it be used in the further development of it and improvement probably, and just to understand that information and data. But of course, the main use case, I think, is when we have big volumes of content that need to be translated. And then we also started to look into internal content, which I'm working quite a lot with. It's e-learning, it's some of this knowledge sharing type of content that we share with our co-workers internally, but it's more than 200,000 people. So it's also quite a big target group. And actually, we thought about MT, because without it, it would even not be possible to provide that content. So it was kind of, either we use MT or we don't know actually how to make it happen. So in that sense, we also use, but then we started to also look a bit into the different quality levels. And as Anna mentioned, we also use post editing. We're trying to find these different kind of borders. How do you identify quality levels and how to use it and create this awareness? Because sometimes it's quite easy for people to think, okay, MT can actually solve all our needs. It's very quick, it's cheap, let's just go for it. But maybe it doesn't work in all the cases. So we're trying to educate people, okay, how it's best to use it.
Interesting, and I think I have lots to learn from both of you in terms of post editing, since we are a little bit, I think, at an earlier stage. We use machine translation mainly for internal communication, and we also operate in a very highly regulated industry. As you know, a medical industry is very highly regulated, so no space for errors, since lots of our materials go out to physicians or patients. So, but for internal communication, there is a huge need indeed of fast and sometimes it's even for critical functions like handling complaints from customers coming in, and we have some specific deadlines. So within a specified amount of hours, those complaints have to be communicated to regulatory authorities. So machine translation comes in as a very useful tool to help out and in the analysis of this information that is coming in, we have HR making very good use of machine translation for achieving their diversity and inclusion goals within the organization. So mostly used for internal. We still have to figure out how to implement it in more post-editing scenarios. I think I have lots to learn from you. And as with regard to how people get to know about the service, we have kind of a very good way of communicating about these kind of initiatives within the organization. It's very effective, but what helps a lot is that colleagues are talking to each other and they are promoting the service from within. So they hear about it, they're satisfied about the results, and then they go to their colleagues and say, hey, look, there is something you could use also to speed up your work or get more efficient. So that's interesting, where we are all at different stages of maturity, I guess, in the usage of MT. And what about you, Tat? You hear probably lots of different needs from different groups and people.
True, but I think in our case it's somewhat easier because upfront we'll just tell user that we provide the bare minimum of TM plus MT translation, and then we just tell them that it is your responsibility to check the quality of the translation, the output. So they're going to have to provide whatever the level that they need for the post editing, right? So I think our bar is lower in compared to what you guys are doing. I think it's a lot more responsibility involved in your cases. And as for the advertisement, we used to go to a lot of trade shows, and the Microsoft has its own event, so we participate those and get the booth or a slot for the presentation, and that's how we advertise ourselves, and then try to have more users come to our service. I mean, it's right now it's only for the Dynamics partners and customers, but then that may change in the future. So
very, very interesting. So I'm going to ask you one question, burning one. I don't know if your organization is using one single solution or multiple ones, and if you're using only one, do you feel that one solution is actually able to meet all the needs of your users? And yeah, I will go for the same sequence, maybe Anna. Oh, we can't hear you at this moment. I think you're
Forgot to unmute, but
yeah.
now you can.
Yes, you can.
Yeah, it's I mean, defining a single solution that works for everything, it's of course challenging. And as I was saying, we have actually a lot of different use cases within SAP from very different areas that require also slight adjustment, right? What we do in our case, we do provide one single solution, which has a very clear focus on SAP's related content and related data. And we try to use it across all different scenarios and text types. We also, I mean, we have done also adjustments over time to bring it to learn, new text types, so to say, like with conversational. We recently had also a presentation in the EAMT about about all of this. But in our case, what we do so that we try to make it work as much as possible, we keep this clear focus, and we pay a lot of attention to the training of the engine. And I also think actually that a big part on making a single solution work is down to us as in our facilitator role, to, so to say, bring the users and the technology to a common understanding about what we can do and what we cannot do. That's how I see it.
Good point. Good point. And what about your case, Anna?
Yeah, I think in our case, we also have, as I mentioned, we have an MT Hub solution which connects all the different engines. And so we could say it's a one single solution that we've been using so far. And I think it's at the moment it satisfies our needs or our use cases. But of course, we are also trying to see, okay, what would be the future? What will be our future use cases? What are the developments in the area of MT, in the industry? And of course, there is constantly something happening. So trying also to see how it can benefit us. So I think in the future, at the moment, for example, we don't so much differentiate the MT, the different engines, for example, based on content type or based on, it's mostly based on language. So maybe that is something that can be for the future, that can be a bit more specialized to the content type. That would probably also help with the quality of our different contents, content related specifics. So I think, at the moment it's working for us. But again, as we are growing and as we discover more use cases, we also need to understand, does it still fit us with more like the future outlook?
Yeah, and I agree with you. I mean, it's also a matter of which task are you going to accomplish with MT, and ideally you could have multiple solutions in terms of, for example, if you're doing post editing, adaptive solutions might be very interesting because they kind of learn on the fly. If you're doing conversational, there are really companies that specialize in doing that kind of type of machine translation. But from the practical side, it also involves duplicating lots of efforts, right? So in terms of finance, procurement, sourcing, testing, security concerns, and so forth. So you often end up having one single solution and customize it to different use cases. That's a little bit where we are as well. But I also agree with your point of view to keep on looking for, new technologies coming out, new developments coming out, and how they fit, the different use cases and the different tasks indeed. So it's also starting from one solution. It's always a good way to get the technology to drive acceptance of the technology within the organization. And then once it's there and people know the usefulness of it, then they are also more open maybe to accept also a second one or a third one next to it and see. And what about you, Tat? Again, from a slightly different perspective.
Right. So I guess saying a single solution is a little bit of a, has a little bit of an interpretation. So I think using a single system, like say we use the Microsoft translator system or the custom translator system, I think that is feasible. But then that is feasible because the system is highly customizable. The same thing that Laura, you're saying, that the customization to adapt slightly different needs. So that's what we do for our service, that we let users choose which product they want to translate with our system or service. And then we have different models that can get applied to the actual translation. So between the products and the languages, we maintain about close to 500 different models. So, depends on the user's input. We will, try to route it to the correct models so that the translation output is going to be as accurate as possible. That's how we do it. And then I'm hoping in the future that, things like a source text analysis becomes more accurate, so that we don't even have to ask that question to the user. We just analyze the source document, recognize the type and styles, and then route it to the correct model.
Yeah,
that would be interesting.
That would be a fantastic thing. I believe that some adaptive solutions, at least, that they kind of have this kind of way of retrieving the correct
context. Yeah.
Context, yes. So it would be nice indeed to have that automated. So with lots of different needs, and how you're managing to balance them all? I mean, when we have different use cases coming in, our perspective, at least in our experience, we kind of treat them all as a different project. So we analyze the needs, we discuss with the stakeholders, and sometimes there is indeed, baseline is enough. Sometimes there is hyper customization needed for a case. So what about you? You seem to have more varied spectrum of use cases. So I'm very interested, Anna. What about your case?
Yeah, that's like the $1 million question, right? How do you manage to keep everyone happy? But yeah, in our case, it's as I was saying, it's difficult because we have a lot of different, very different use cases, external, but also internal. So it means we need to balance between sometimes very different user requirements. And it's also challenging because, of course, each, as you say, each project may be different and requires different levels of speed, quality, or whatever. And in our case, what we do is we try to be in close cooperation with these business owners or project leads that want to have our MT implemented or want to consume it in some way. And we try to be very clear in what to use it for and what to not use it for, trying to prevent disappointments beforehand. And what we always recommend is to try to keep feedback in mind, try to check on the quality, make sure that it's okay, do maybe a pilot first. And then, once all of that is clear and the requirements are also more clear, more defined, what we, as I was saying, MT is like a development team. So we try to balance out the different requirements that come from the different users and use cases and weight depending on different criteria. Like, for instance, what brings most benefit to a bigger amount of users, or we try to distinguish between what would be a short-time improvement or a long-term improvement, or if we would be able to realize something like quick wins and these kind of things.
Yeah, very good practice, actually. And what about you, Anna?
I think a bit related to Anna's cases, I think the main challenge is for us to really prioritization. And for example, also we have always to balance, okay, we have customer facing communication, something that needs to go out there immediately, having shorter turnaround times versus internal communication, that maybe has a bit more time lines attached to them, but it's also quite important in terms of quality. And then I think it's also about, again, coming back to this quality question, is when we use post editing, is to explain it, to kind of educate again people to understand what is post editing and what does it do with the machine translation outcome. Why should we use it in certain cases, and why should we maybe, we could say, invest in that. So sometimes, and also we try to also understand, okay, there are different levels of post editing. There is light post editing, there is kind of medium level, there is high level post editing, and also to compare how does it compare with the traditional way of translating, because that is, I think, that quite a lot of people within our organization are used to, and based on that, trying to understand, okay, what are the benefits that we get if we do machine translation, if we do post editing, and what kind of quality would I then, what would be the outcome, and how can I work with that? So I think it's, it differs quite a lot. As I described, we have really various use cases. So it takes some time to really kind of understand what the actual needs are and how it's best to fit it. So it's a bit more customized in that way, because sometimes it's very easy to say that, okay, MT, it can just be applied and that's it, but it's not maybe as simple as that. So,
and maybe one question that always triggered me is, like, with this light post editing, does it really work, or do you have any experience that tells? Because I always had the impression, like, okay, you have machine translation or you have post editing, and then it's corrected, but what is half corrected, right? So does it work? In your experience?
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. I think, and that's what we encountered when we did some analysis for our internal content. So we did compare different levels, and we involved our language specialists, the internal language specialists, to evaluate and to really be kind of critical, and to be also objective in a way, and to see what these different levels bring. And I think we don't have so many use cases for the light post editing, and eventually some of the outcome of this evaluation was that, especially it was only done for a certain group of languages. So it's of course it depends also on the language, but for this specific group of languages, it didn't really prove itself, so to say. So it's either, MT was not good enough, and it really needed a thorough editing for this specific content and for this language, or it was maybe quite okay, quite good enough in understanding, quite accurate. So maybe you don't see the benefit of doing this light post editing. So I think it's it's an interesting point to maybe investigate a bit further. But these were some of our learnings.
Maybe some LSP in the crowd can comment on this later.
If I may ask actually a related question, and even if we derive a little bit from the original one, but you mentioned, Anna, using even different levels, not only just light and full, but also maybe medium post editing. Do you use the same people to work on all those different quality levels, so to say, or how do you organize that?
Yeah, so what we, of course, this is outsourced, and it's the same teams that are involved. And of course, as I said, we don't use light post editing so much, but it is actually, as we understand, the same people. But of course, it is a bit of a challenge because it's quite specific skill set, and I think not every translator maybe is ready to do it, or is having those skills, or is willing to do it. So we're trying also to find that balance, and to understand that the people really understand what kind of level they do of post editing, what is required, what are the expectations. and what is kind of the reality. So yeah, it's I think it's something that we also continue to be in close cooperation with our partners then.
Yeah, then I could share just to close from the SAP side with a very similar experience, actually, that if you do light post editing, you need to be very clear about what's the quality standard for both the user requesting it and also the person working on it, to avoid like misunderstandings in both directions, where experiences with light post editing are also mixed. So yeah, definitely, I think that it requires more agreement upfront with the users and the people working on it. Yeah.
I really like your concept of, avoiding misunderstandings in both directions, because it's really true. So let's not forget also not only the customers, but the translators, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And editors. And what about you, Tat? So you have lots of different...
Yeah, so I totally agree with everyone that, the setting the right expectation for the user is super important. And that, changes the outcome or opinions about the MTs, for us, since we don't do the post editing, there's not much that I can provide in that space. But for setting the user expectation, while we're signing up the user or letting user create the translation request, we ask series of questions, or we'll let the users upload their assets, and then we provide basically the three different levels of translation quality. So the one or the least one is that the users only have source files to translate, but doesn't have TM, doesn't have empty model. In that case, we just provide the raw MT and then give the result back to the user. But when the user has the translation memory, then we can use their translation memory to leverage the translation, as well as use the empty model that we have, and then provide the translation based on that. I think that the most or the best quality comes when the user also asks us to create the model specific to their TM. So it adds a little bit more requirement, like, you have to have certain number of translation units in the TM, but that will probably give the best result because, we're creating the custom model, the empty model based on their TM, right? It takes probably about 8 hours or so to produce that, create the custom model, and then finish whole translation process. Some customers are willing to wait for that time, where others wants the result just quickly. But then we basically tell them that the quality you get is probably there. So that's how we try to to educate the user what kind of quality they should be expecting.
Very good. So since we have to mind a little bit of time, because we want also to leave some space for questions, I would actually like to combine a little bit two questions here. We have one that it's about basically what are your, and this is probably not for you, Tat, but for the rest of your roadblocks that you experienced when rolling out the machine translation program, or major challenges. And the second question that we had was more on, what if there are any specific dynamics in play when you do this kind of programs and you roll out the technology, eventually who is funding these initiatives? Do you experience challenges with that? So I don't know who, maybe Anna, would you like to get started here for this one, the challenges of
Yeah, I mean, for us, I think there are two kind of opposites, probably the different groups of stakeholders or people, and one is thinking, okay, it's really great to have machine translation program, to have this capability, but then they have really, I think, high expectations on that. So it's to balance that again and to say, okay, yes, we have an MT program, you can use it. It can be easily connected to the different, the different systems that might be in place, or the different applications that you want to roll out. But it's really also to be mindful of what is the outcome that you want to reach, what are the target groups that you are trying to reach by using MT for localizing your content. And then the other challenges with this opposite group, which is a little bit more, okay, we with machine translation, we get quite poor quality. It takes a lot of time maybe to bring it up to speed. So actually we don't really see the benefit. So it's a bit hard to convince people to kind of to create that understanding that actually, yes, as I mentioned in the beginning, if we are growing and we're growing with this fast pace, we are producing more and more content. We want to make it to make it reachable, so that it and accessible for people in different markets. Then, of course, we need to have certain capabilities. And actually, as I say, without MT, I think it would just not be possible to make it available. So I think it's really taking, as we talked a bit in some of previous topics, that it's about educating people about the benefits of this program and how it's best to use it. I think that's what we encountered so far.
So this topic of education is coming back, and we will touch it as the last one. So it's indeed a challenge. And what about you, Anna? What are your challenges? What have been your roadblocks?
I think similarly to Anna, actually, and I think one of the challenges is that everyone has an opinion on machine translation or on translation, even if maybe people are missing the big picture of or the background on how it can impact, right? Because translation may not be the core business of our enterprises, and then it can be easily forgotten. In the case of SAP, I would say actually that translation has a lot of value, and how MT is considered is, or how we position it is as a tool for products, for assets, or for employees. So yeah, same as Anna, if we want to grow in terms of content that we want to translate it in local markets, basically the only way to do this in a cost-effective manner is to use the help of technologies like machine translation. And I think the other part of the question, which was the funding, I think it sometimes it can fund itself, right? If you use it to roll out more amount of translated content, which means lowering translation costs, you could potentially reinvest all of those savings. So in the case of responsibility, like who is funding these initiatives, we are a development team. So what we do is we improve our product, which is machine translation. And in most cases, the responsibility of implementing the service itself comes down to the team or product that wants to use it. So what we do on that end to support as much as we can is to provide plenty of rollout materials and consultation whenever it's needed.
Yeah, and I kind of agree with you. You know, it's like selling machine translation within a translation organization is different from selling it to an organization that doesn't provide it as a core business. So it's indeed a matter of letting people understand the idea and also getting people aligned I liked actually what you said about everybody has an opinion about MT, Anna, because it's indeed not only, but in a large organization, there might be even multiple initiatives going on where somebody prefers one technology to the other for any reasons. And indeed, calculating return on investment, it's also quite difficult because it's not always, especially if you apply it as a productivity tool, you won't measure it immediately with the post-editing, savings made by post-editing. So it's more like how many FTEs will be saved in a specific department by becoming more efficient through the use of MT. So that's also a big challenge, I think, in the implementation. And that makes also a little bit complicated, you know, the role of funding as well. So who should be funding this, because who is benefiting from that as well? So sometimes it's not completely measurable or clear. So very, very interesting. Tati, you want to add something to this, or you think?
Yeah, I just you know, see a few unfortunate things through my service that some people have the coming to this empty world thinking that it's not going to work, right? It's a machine. It'll never be good enough. So I do, unfortunately, people who submit the you know, completely different materials. Like we advertise that our service is geared towards the ERP, CRM, and such, but then, you know, someone will just upload the marketing material, their own resume, and then see if that translates well. It probably won't, because it's a different domain, right? And I also even had the person who submitted the document containing "this will not work" as a sentence. So, you know, you can see right there that the attitude, and I feel sorry that, you know, for these people, because they're not testing it right, so that they won't see the benefit of it. You know, it's really unfortunate. So I do see that as a challenge to educate people, and then, you know, so that MT can be used more, you know, the better way. But on the flip side, though, there are many machine translated materials that are available throughout the web these days, you know, in the social medias and such. So people are used to seeing the a little bit of funny translation, and then they started to accept those. And then, you know, users being trained so that they take the real context out of those funny translations. So I think, you know, increasing adaptation lowers the expectation on a perfect translation. And I think that is probably working for our benefit.
Yeah, that's so you're introducing very well the last theme of the webinar, which was indeed about educations, how you educate your users, how you manage those expectations on the usage of the technology, and also whose responsibility should it be. Maybe you want to further comment on this, and then we pass the word to the rest. Tata, is it anything else to add to this? You said a lot already about how you manage the user's expectation.
Yeah, like I said, yeah, managing the user expectation is a challenge, but then, you know, again, that, you know, we just have to keep repeating ourselves that, you know, these are the expectations, you know, tell them what is expected from the output, and then we'll try to be as good at, you know, good about what we say we will provide. And then again, I'm repeating myself, but you know, it's nice that those the funny translations are available throughout the web, and then lowering the user's expectation about the MT. So that's good too.
That's also true. Yeah. And Anna, what about you and SAP?
Yeah, I fully agree with one of the things that Kat said, that users need to also yeah, educate, right? And about the testing, I mean, we could do another webinar, right, on how to recommend people what to test, what not to test. I think I have a similar experience. Sometimes people can be very adverse to the technology, dealing with the opposite, though, with people that are extremely optimistic and do not even consider the chance that it's just a machine and it can fail, of course. That's also very difficult. So what we do is again try to manage expectations from the very beginning, and make clear also to the end user that they are consuming something that is a technology, right, that has been generated through a machine. We do that most of the cases through disclaimers, and in our experience it has it has worked quite fine. And in terms of managing the expectations of the teams who want to make use of this technology, or even also external customers, we always recommend a series of steps that I briefly commented before, like we recommend them to make a quality evaluation beforehand, to maybe run a POC, capture end user feedback. And I do see also, even if users need to educate themselves, I do see as part of our role as facilitators of the technology to bring this knowledge also to them. And on our end, we have, for instance, like free trainings available where we cover all of these aspects, like what is machine translation as a technology, which what things have to be considered. But it's also important to try to mediate, I think, between the users and the technology.
Good. And I totally agree. I mean, and what about Anna? I think I will give you the last word, and then just making my final comments.
Yeah, I think in short, I can just add that, I also relate to what Anna and Tat said, but then what we also do, two things. One is that we're trying also to simplify this communication to the many users about MT, not only to the ones who are requesters and who are maybe in the technology field, so they can have more understanding, but for example, if we have a portal which is kind of similar to Google Translate, but specified on our tone of voice, and we encourage people to use it, how they can use it, what is the benefit for them, why they should use better this portal instead of maybe some public available portals. And on the other side, we are also educating our content developers, content writers. So we start actually from the source text. So how can they write it with this mindset that it will not only exist in English, this perfect copy or perfect text written in English, it will not only exist, then it will be translated to multiple different languages, and what it takes for the machine to do it, or maybe in a traditional process, what kind of guidelines they should keep in mind, and of course not too much restricting them when it's not needed, but just to have that mindset. I think it's quite important, and that impacts also the outcome and the quality.
Yeah, very good point. And I think it also comes up, it's a little bit education about AI in general, not only machine translation, so what it can do, cannot do. Good. We get back to Isabella. We didn't give you so much time for questions, unfortunately. We wanted to share so much.
Well, maybe we can very quickly do a couple of questions. So
sure.
I see, let's see whether we can open the microphones. For example, Luisa. Oh, she's disappeared. Okay. Let's see, she logged off. Let's see. Luisa?
Hi.
Hi. What is your question?
Oh, right. Our question was if you use any specific metrics to measure success of your MT program. We understand it's rather subjective if when using light post-editing, full post-editing, but we wanted to know if there are specific metrics that you can really assess if the machine the MT engine is working as expected, if the client is satisfied, if the MTPE is working as expected and such.
Very quick answer, please. I want to take a couple more questions.
I think my answer is probably the quickest. Repeat customers. That's the way to tell for us.
Okay.
Yeah.
We use
And-
both depending on the use case. We use automatic metrics, the metric of how much post editing has been done, but also subjective feedback depending on the use case.
Okay. Let's go quickly to another question. I think there was Michelle who had an interesting remark. Michelle, do you want to speak with the panelists?
I just had a comment that we have this system that we are translating using MT, but it's a database of product data that is then fed into multiple pages on our website, on different tools in the company. And so it's kind of tricky to know if we need to put a disclaimer, because the other part of the content of the page is done by humans. So it's only a very small fraction that comes from MT. So that was just a comment.
Well, thank you.
Good one.
Yeah.
Very quickly, a question from Kirill. Kirill, you want to?
Hey, yeah, this is Kirill from ContentQuo. I was just going to ask, do you folks use any formal human quality evaluation? I only heard about automatic metrics and subjective feedback, but do you guys like do adequacy, fluency, or MQM error annotation for your engine output? Thanks.
We do direct assessment of machine translation through users and to evaluate accuracy, terminology, and other things, and also productivity analysis.
Okay.
Similar for us.
Yeah, there are other questions coming in. Unfortunately, we need to close the webinar. What I'm going to do is I'm going to collect them and send them to the panelists. And then if you guys want to reply directly, it would be great. Is that okay for everyone? Anna and Laura and Tata, thank you so much. It was mighty interesting. And clearly there's a lot of need for this kind of discussions. So please come back and present again. And thank you to everyone who attended. As soon as I close the webinar, you'll probably see a feedback form. Fill it in, let us know what you think. Everything you tell us, your feedback will help us refine our webinar program. And we have 2 more webinars before the break, before the summer break. July 7, we have AI use cases in localization with Sébastien Bratier, who is, among other things, the founder of the Pi Campus in Rome, which is the Center for AI Research. And on the 21st of July, we have Paola Ferrari from Go Global Consultancy, and she'll talk about maintaining an agile workflow and at the same time maintaining the ISO standard compliance. So quite a tricky thing to do. Thank you, everyone, and have a good day, have a good evening, depending on where you are. And I hope to see you soon at another Gala webinar. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.